Everyone, this is Ultra Runner. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to take a quick look at just a topic a few of us are kind of discussing, just as far as like what figures, IPs, or figures from IPs are allowed to be made by the companies that actually have the license, whether it's temporary or something they own permanently. And part of the discussion came back from the fact that I mentioned that because of this, what you see on the screen right now, which is Savage Press, when Hasbro showed their version, and then I think maybe a week or two before, Hot Toys showed their version, I decided to stop collecting 12 scale and started collecting 6 scale. So Savage Press is the reason I changed my entire collection around, but it was because of the way they looked and the fact that I felt that the Black Series version was not even a good representation at 12 scale, let alone nearly as good as the 6 scale version. And so, but it was kind of weird because there wasn't like a major Clone Wars revival where they released, 7, 8, 9 figures. It was just these. And of course, to have the prototypes ready to go, like in both of these cases, these figures had to have been prepped, maybe 6 months before that, maybe a little bit more than that. I'm not really sure. I know development simply seems to take around a year and a half to 2 years from production to release for a lot of these really big time 6 scale figures. So maybe 6 or 8 months before that, they got the news on this and they decided what they're going to do. But it had me started thinking about, okay, so how much control do we have? Because I know we kind of get on some of these companies like Hot Toys and Black Series about, why don't you make this character? Why don't you make this character? So many characters out there. Why aren't you giving us more? And so I started really kind of digging into it. And then the next thing I came up with was like this Wolverine pool, which was Hot Toys already had theirs out and released, and then several weeks later, Marvel Legends released the exact same figure in Marvel Legends. And it's kind of like, okay, well, why? This movie is long gone. It's been a few years now, and I know there's not a lot of they didn't make every single body, especially Hot Toys. Hot Toys even finished Elektra and Gambit, and then they just kind of moved on from those guys. And I don't think Marvel Legends did either. But the point is, it's who has control over what you make. Is your license allow you to make whatever you want, or is your license more controlled by the license holder? And with the Clone Wars piece, we didn't get a brand new Maul in Hot Toys, completely redone. We didn't get a brand new one in Black Series either. Now, granted, that could have been because Maul Shadow Lord was coming out, a year down the road or something like that. But they're not quite the same, so maybe that was the case. But in a case like this, you have a pretty unique concept art character, wasn't in the movie, and they both decided to do this concept art character as opposed to doing characters who are actually in the movie. So it's, like I said, it's kind of a weird thing, but you start looking at it and aligning some of the stuff you can see. Another example would be like the Daredevil from Daredevil Born Again, the black suit, spray paint suit. Well, both of these guys went up around the same time from both Hot Toys and Marvel Legends. And, a lot of people are asking, well, we don't want that version of Daredevil, we want this version, and both of them were kind of the paint is coming off, and, that's how it looked in the show. But that's not the iconic version of Daredevil with the 2Ds on his chest. Everybody wants, what's going to end up being the red suit with the double Ds. And, just kind of one of those things where these came out around the same time. Again, Marvel Legends actually did a 2-pack with theirs, as opposed to Hot Toys just did Daredevil by himself. So just one of those things where is that what the people who watch this show wanted. A lot of people were like, yeah, this was cool to have. But again, the suit changed every time he put it on or every fight because the paint was peeling off. So he only looked like this for, a few seconds at most. And then you look at something like, I don't have the Anakin on here from Hot Toys, but the Mustafar set. You had the Mustafar, Anakin, and Obi-Wan from Hot Toys, and you had the 2-pack, which was a SCD. What was that, SDCC set for Black Series. And with this, it was kind of cool because when we saw the Black Series version, almost everybody in six scale community was like, clearly we're going to get this. Nobody really knew why we were going to get it. You just kind of had to feel if they're making it on Black Series, then we're going to get it in six scale. And I'm sure we did. We got the great Obi-Wan, and we got like our, I don't know, I feel like the seventh Anakin. Granted, this was probably one of the better ones because he had swap out eyes and both lightsabers and things like that, so he could be dark side or light side. But the whole point is, it was a figure where, or it was a set where it was almost telegraphing one to the other. So if you collect 12 scale, you kind of had this coming. And a lot of it was really wish listing. Nobody knew it was coming, but we were all hoping that we would get, if you were looking for this Revenge of the Sith set, that something like this would come. And it was pretty close because we got the same base. You can see here in the picture. Obi-Wan got the same base, and then they they made a new Anakin, but it gave him the old base from the original Dark Side Anakin that released in Hot Toys several years ago. So you got literally the exact same thing. It wasn't in two bag, of course. I mean, it was $200-$300 figures, but a pretty, like I say, the fact that these were not that far apart, and this wasn't the anniversary of Revenge of the Sith or anything like that at all, where they was doing some big Revenge of the Sith figure releases. It was just kind of what they did with this particular case. And then we look at stuff like, the Snyderverse. And it is always funny because people talk about, why are we still talking about Snyderverse? It's old. We need to move on with the future. And then you have the same people that are talking about, okay, we need more Dark Knight stuff. It's like, well, Dark Knight's actually older than that, guys. So, the original Nolan trilogy started before the Snyderverse. So, but it is what it is. Everybody has their preference. My preference is Snyderverse. I don't like the Dark Knight trilogy. It is what it is. But for this is another example. Hot Toys and InArt dropped their 6 scale figures pretty close to each other, I would say. Well, I guess that technically they were announced around the same time, but Hot Toys came out first just because it's Hot Toys, and they always make their stuff pretty quick. With them being they mass produced, and this was really more of a body change and things like that, a little upgrade forward. But whether you like the InArt or the Hot Toys, that's really neither here nor there. I've already said I've got the InArt on order, and I've essentially all my DC is coming from InArt. Even if I have to wait, I'd rather get the best version personally to me across the board. For the DC characters I do collect, and most of that's going to be Snyderverse anyway. But again, these two came out around the same time, and you didn't see anybody else. InArt is doing a Wonder Woman, but I think part of that was because they got the license rate and they needed to expand. Well, Hot Toys didn't actually announce a Wonder Woman, which we all kind of were surprised. We figured, hey, there's no way they're going to let them get that updated money, because the Hot Toys Wonder Woman was not even from the Snyderverse. She was like that Wonder Woman 100 year anniversary WB. So again, it's one of those things where you're seeing some relatively similar drops at the same time, and maybe it's I would imagine if these guys all have NDAs, they're not telling WB's not telling one company what the other one's doing, but there's got to be some degree of it as far as knowing when it's going to go up. And then aside from like new media, so like the Supermans, of course, were announced around the same time from the movie. Hot Toys came out first. InArt is just now going out to collectors. Now it's a little different for new media, because new media, I would imagine they're all saying, hey, this movie's coming out. Here's the test footage, here's the test shots, and you guys can make your assessments and go ahead and get your prototypes ready for the announcement. And it had to have been, like in a case like this, because these suits are so different, even the fact that InArt typically does significantly higher end scale execution, theirs is pretty inaccurate compared to the Hot Toys, and the Hot Toys is not a great figure anyway. The suit texture doesn't look great. His proportions are good, but his head sculpt is better. I mean, he looks more like Corn Sweat than the InArt version does, but I don't know why, there's the suits are so different, other than the fact that this was probably something they got way before. And of course, we've seen in a lot of other situations where we get the prototype, or the company get the prototype stuff first, and the movie comes out and it's not quite the same. The Spider-Man Inside Out suit was a good example of that. And everybody was kind of upset about that if you got the Hot Toys because it was blatantly inaccurate, just because that's not how it ended up panning out. But in a case like this, my example for this one here is we only got Superman and Crypto from this movie, even though you had Miss and 60. Now, and McFarlane did, touch kind of everybody else, I think. But for 60, you only got those. Now the movie didn't like do $1 billion or nothing like that, but it also wasn't a flop, and a lot of people love James Gunn's take on Superman. Me personally, I didn't enjoy it. That's just me, and it had anything to do with anything other than the fact that I don't like James Gunn applying Guardians of the Galaxy to every movie he does. And I like my Superman to be beastly, and I like the dark tone of the Snyderverse. But again, that's neither here nor there. But the fact that both of these 6-scale lines, in art, which is backed by Queen Studio, which is a huge company in statue and a life-size statue company, and then with their 6-scale, and then Hot Toys, which is the biggest 6-scale guys out there, all the good IPs, they only made Superman and Crypto. Nobody else, not Mr. Terrific, not Guy Gardner, not Heartgirl, nobody. So was this because the movie didn't do well, or was it because initially the DC was like, hey, just do Superman because we have plans for Man of Tomorrow and Supergirl and all this stuff coming down the road where we're going to want these characters to come out, and then you can do that to kind of revive the fever around the movie and things like that. And maybe during a lull time, you start making those characters to kind of keep the hype going. We really don't know the inside. And I think that'd be one of the cool things if somebody I know Bobby Ballard does this quite a bit, but G.I. Joe doesn't have the same kind of presence that a lot of the other IPs have, but he does give a lot of inside information about, figure building and development and things of that nature. But I said it'd be really cool to get an insider to give us some information around the IP discussion to find out why we don't get what we want. Because like a lot of the community would say, hey, I would love to get these 4 characters, or why didn't you finish out the Resistance fighters, from Deadpool and Wolverine, and why didn't you get more of the Wolverine characters? I mean, we didn't get Cowboy Pool and 6-scale, but we got Wolverine Pool, which was not even in the movie. It was a concept. Now, granted, if you guys know me, you've seen my collection tour. I love concept art. I love lore-based stuff like that. So I just added the Battle Damage GX45B Vader to my collection. I'll probably show that at some point. I got to do another probably comparison video. And then I've got the concept art mall. I've got some of the vintage art, vintage Boba Fett's. There's a lot of characters. I mean, I got the concept art Captain America, so I'm okay with the concept art stuff across the board. But the issue is why aren't we yeah, the question is, why aren't we getting everything we really want in regards to how some of these properties are made? And I just want to just kind of talk to you guys about that to see your thoughts on it. If any of you guys who are maybe watching this video who are on that side of production or in any industry. I know the industry I'm in, a lot of times you just can't discuss it, and you don't have any control over what you're doing in specific things. But I'm not sure if that works for the toy industry, but it just seems to be like a lot of this stuff is not up to the ones who are buying the license, is up to the license holder. And if we're going to get the characters and figures we want out of these lines, I guess we'll probably have to that's a lot of feedback, I would imagine, going to these companies to saying, hey, we want this, we want this, we want this, or maybe something that it's not even viable for them to do this, but it seemed to be very choreographed as far as what comes out and who drops it all, whether you're talking about like Funkos, Black Series, Marvel Legends, Hot Toys, In Art, um, Cos Babies. You always see these things drop around the same time, and they may not even be relevant right now with relevant media. I mean, because Clone Wars definitely wasn't relevant when it dropped Savage. Daredevil still relatively new, but it was the season was just about getting going. With the Wolverine pool again, that movie's long gone. So while we're doing that, with the Obi-Wan Mustafar set, from Hot Toys and In Art, Hot Toys and Black Series, like again, you're releasing the exact same thing, just in different scales and so forth. And then again, when it comes to the Superman, it's like, why did you guys both decide to only do this one thing? Is that something that was your decision, or is that a decision that someone else made? So hopefully we can get, I know InArt does some live streams with some of the guys, or I think one of the guys and one of the YouTubers, Wolf Oxification. Maybe next time he's on, some of the questions we can get answered to see how we have a better understanding of this. Because I think part of it is, if we knew it was coming, it'd be easy for us to collect. And if we knew that their property wasn't, their particular company wasn't going to make this particular part of the property, then it gives us options whether you want to go custom, or wait, or just not even go into that line because you want to have it more fleshed out. So, but yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Appreciate you guys hanging out. Thanks so much. Later.